What's up, everybody? Irish Ronin here with my top 10 games from the Interstellar Garden Game Jam number 5. The theme of this jam was retro. Now, I participated in this game, in this jam, but my game will not be making this list because it's that hot mess you're looking at right now. Before we jump into the list, let me tell you what I'm looking for in a game jam game. Number 1 is fun. If the game's not fun, what's the point? Number 2, creativity. I want to see something I've never seen before, or see something I have seen but used in a new way. Number 3, easy to learn, hard to master. If I have to spend 15 minutes learning a crafting system or just figuring out what I'm supposed to do, you lost me. Number 4, polish. Game Jam games have a lot of time pressure, so if you're able to put together a polished, highly functional game in the time allotted, that deserves props. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. Coming in at number 10 is Space Bikers by Ugly Duckling Games. Just like the title says, you're a biker in outer space. It's a fun shooter, it's got pretty standard power-ups, but where this game really wins points for me is in the creative concept. It's absurd in that kind of old arcade game kind of a style, like how could the rider breathe, or how would a motorcycle be able to move around in space? You know, don't ask dumb questions, just shoot the aliens, okay? Now, it is easy to learn, pretty hard to master, I would say, because there's nice little touches like when you move the bike up or if you brake, it actually tips the bike up a little bit, so that changes the direction of your shots, and it adds a nice little slice of difficulty that makes it not so straightforward like a typical fixed gun shooter. In terms of art, I really like the clean monochromatic pixel art. I think it looks really good. Maybe that's a personal preference, but hey, it's my review. So, all told, it's a fun little retro game, and you should play it. Number 9 is a twist on a classic called Wordress by Xascoria. Now, it plays a lot like Tetris, but rather than placing, falling tetrominoes with their 4 blocks, you're actually placing what I've decided to call alphominos, because it's the letters of words you enter into a menu. Every time you play through the letters that you've just entered, you have to enter a new word, and you can't enter the same word twice, which I think is pretty cool. So it gives you a nice little wrinkle of control because you can kind of choose your pieces, but they're very unfamiliar pieces. And it's extra difficult because, oddly enough, letters don't pack very efficiently. So you're basically being forced to create holes just all the time. Polish-wise, it functions exactly as you would expect, so that's great. No bugs. The art and sound adds a nice kind of chill vibe. It's not as stressful as Tetris can be. But overall, it's a cool concept, well executed. Very solid entry into the jam. Number 8 on the list is Pixelated Peril by Nzia. You're a block, you gotta avoid other blocks, you gotta collect coins. Pretty straightforward. What I like most about this game is how clean it is. It functions exactly as you would expect it to. No bugs, no quote-unquote, unfair hitboxes. It just works. To me, what it felt like was one of those Flash games from probably 15-ish years ago, which is what the creator said they were going for, so, full marks for hitting the target. Like I said, it functions well, and I particularly like that my intuition to ride along certain walls to kind of guarantee my safety from the enemies was correct. There's no surprises. If you think you're safe, you're probably safe. It's definitely easy to learn, though not that hard to master, but I suppose if you're trying to speed run it, it would definitely be difficult. So that's something, though that's not really how I play it. To me, it works best as just a low-key way to pass some time playing a casual game. In the number 7 spot, we have Terretro by RMS 752. Gameplay-wise, we're not breaking any molds here. You've got a planet, you've got a turret that revolves around the planet, and you got to shoot the enemies before you get to you. That said, it's very well executed. The enemies spawn and close in at a really good rate, so there's that sense of urgency without it feeling too frantic or unfair. And, it's a classic kind of setup, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But the real reason that this game makes the list is the gimmick. Remember that the theme of the jam is retro. As you progress through the levels, the graphics keep improving. So you start with Atari level graphics, then you move on to Game Boy, and then finally SNES. I really like this idea, and that's probably because it's the same idea that I tried to implement in the unfinished abomination of a game that I submitted. But we don't need to talk about that. It's a solid game. It's well built, with a cool twist that fits the theme extremely well. Sixth place goes to Subspace Survivor by Artias. It's a top-down shooter, but the twist is you can't actually aim your gun, it just kind of constantly revolves around you. I really like this mechanic because it replaces aiming with timing, and this adds greatly to that easy-to-learn, hard-to-master factor. So when you're moving your ship, or, I don't know if it's a ship, maybe it's an alien, doesn't matter. Anyway, when you're moving around and you're trying to avoid the enemies and simultaneously track where your gun is pointed, it adds a very enjoyable level of challenge. From a polish perspective, the game looks great. It's clear that a lot of attention went into the art style. All the game objects are very easily differentiated. The pulsing background is a nice touch. I really like the chevron blast. I think that's pretty cool. Overall, there's a lot of bloom going on, but who hasn't gone a little nuts with the bloom from time to time? Number 5 is Reluctant Pac-Man by DataPotato. This game is here for one very simple reason. DataPotato is either a genius or utterly insane. The game is basically Pac-Man, but Pac-Man's not into it. So you move a cursor around with the arrow keys and drag around Pac-Man, who's like free-floating on this floppy tether. It is chaotic to say the very least. I had so much fun playing this game that I didn't even look for like bugs or like how polished is it or any of that. It's just a good time, just plain and simple. And that's the number one goal of a game for me. Also, incidentally, I am awarding DataPotato my personal best username of the Jam award. DataPotato. It's beautiful. Exploding into number 4, see what I did there? Is Bomba by Red Teapot. This game puts out some strong Bomberman vibes, but it definitely adds enough to that old formula to make sure it's something entirely new. The gameplay has you placing bombs to destroy bricks and kill enemies and find keys so you can unlock doors, etc., etc. One of the really cool mechanics here is this greenish fluid, which is maybe acid? I don't know, but you definitely don't want to touch it because then you lose health, so there you go. When you explode one of the, kind of containing walls, it spreads out over the level, like across the tiles, which adds a very puzzly element to the action. I had to restart more than a couple levels because I flooded myself into a corner, and as I tried to cross that pool, I died. I felt like that old lady in Dante's Peak pushing the canoe. Doesn't matter. The art is beautiful. The unorthodox muted palette gave the game a unique feel that I thought worked very, very well. Not to mention an excellent blend of traditional pixel art with particle effects, which is not an easy thing to pull off and make look good together. So, you should check it out. The bronze medal goes to Evaluated by Lanky387. Now, there was no description in the game by the creator as to exactly what's going on here, so I'm just going to make some up. You're a spherical mechanical alien being studied in a lab, maybe, and your goal is to just keep moving forward. So the game centers on this very simple but very unusual movement style where you click the mouse and the player launches at wherever your cursor was. And when I say launch, I mean launch, which is one of the best parts of the game. The camera lag and how the camera reacts to the mouse, the motion blur, the speed with which your player moves, all serve to give this very visceral sense of just taking off. And then you combine that with like this ugly, nasty plume of diesel-looking exhaust when you take off and chunks of the environment breaking loose on impact, clanking noises and all that stuff. It adds together to get this very, very crunchy feeling in the experience. In terms of creating an atmosphere and immersive gameplay, this game stands alone from the Jam. Music, sound, pacing, graphics, all of it mixes together to create this impressionistic experience, even while the physics puzzles are very, very readable. There's no question about what you're supposed to be doing, which is not a super easy thing to do. Honestly, this is just one that I hope gets expanded in the future, because I would absolutely love to play the full version of this game. The silver medal winner is Super Bubble Kingdom by Ludovic. The game is a platformer where you play as this little guy with a bubble gum, and it allows you to temporarily trap your enemies in bubbles, and then you bounce off them to traverse the level. So, right off the bat, I love the premise. You're defending the Bubble Kingdom from enemies that are all pointy. Pointy things pop bubbles. This conflict was inevitable. Visually, the game is stunning. It never ceases to amaze me how a skilled artist can do so much with such a limited palette. The shooting stars in the background are beautiful, and they help to create this kind of dreamlike atmosphere as you play. There's also a nice bit of polish when you boot up the game and you see kind of like a Game Boy, and then when you actually start the game, it zooms in on the screen and you get this real sense of being sucked into the game. It's just wonderful. The controls are tight and intuitive. Really, the only thing missing from this game is more game. I want some more. Come on. Space Intruders by Robotnik Games is a top-down shooter where the player and the enemies can only damage each other when their sprite colors don't match. So if they're both black, won't work. If they're both white, won't work. If one's white, one's black, then they can actually shoot each other. So that's pretty cool. I also really like the title, where it's kind of like a more polite version of Space Invaders, where it's like, we're not invading, we're just intruding a little bit. Operation Starship Probe by Weapon is a really atmospheric game where you get to explore this derelict spacecraft in search of clues for what caused the ship to flounder. It didn't make the list just because I kind of got lost in the ship, but that notwithstanding, it sucked me in. It was very cool. I was content to be lost in that ship for like 10 minutes because it's just cool. The final entry in our honorable mention category is Arcade Anarchy by Spooksy. It's a WarioWare-like game that was very fun, very well executed, and hats off for basically making 5 little games in the same amount of time. Everybody else only made 1. I really enjoyed it. It was cool. And the winner is One Boot Ahead by Kepsert. The premise here is that you're a boy, well, the disembodied head of a boy named Julian, and that head is in a boot. So, okay. Julian's mom is seriously uncool. So like any normal head in a boot, Julian flies to the moon. That's what's going on. I only mention the story in this much detail because the game actually has a story, which is pretty great. The fun factor is definitely present on this one. There's funny meta dialogue, engaging gameplay, talking moon giraffes. I mean, what more could you ask for? All of that feeds into the creativity factor, but so does the core mechanic. The boot, which is, I don't know, probably wrapped around Julian's neck stump, shoots out these little chevrons that serve not only to propel you in the low lunar gravity, but it also attacks enemies. It triggers switches, it does all kinds of stuff. There's lots of kind of standard platforming mechanics here, but implemented in very unique ways to accommodate the primary mechanic of the boot. This is the epitome of easy to learn and hard to master. The controls are intuitive and tight, but getting good at controlling Julian as he bounces around the lunar landscape, not easy. Fortunately, the difficulty progression is very well tuned. Not a lot of enemies to start out, let you get your feet wet before it really dials it up. Polish-wise, this game is top-notch. It's the best in the jam. Everything from graphics to sound to stories to menus, everything functions beautifully and fits well together. Not to mention, this almost monochromatic pixel art style is beautiful, one of my absolute favorites. Even these little touches, like the serene little smile on Julian's face when he's moving at top speed, show an attention to detail that's not easy to find in a jam game. But truth be told, this isn't a jam game. This is a full game. It's fully realized. It could be expanded, of course, but man, I can't believe somebody put this together in only 5 days. It's great. And that does it for my top 10 picks from Interstellar Game Jam 5. I had a lot of fun playing many of the other games, and if your game didn't make the list, don't feel bad. This is just one man's opinion. Check out the description for links to the other games from this list and to the submission page for the jam to check out the rest. If you liked the video, do me a solid, hit that like button. If you really liked the video, hit the subscribe button, and maybe give me a follow on Twitter at Irish Ronin Games. If you didn't like the video, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time. I'll be making a top 10 video like this for each jam I participate in. Until then, this is Irish Ronin reminding you of the ultimate game loop: do, fail, learn, repeat. See you next time.